Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another Axel 72 video. And in today's video, I'm going to be predicting the Thurman versus Jarvis fight. And so if you are new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so, like the video if you do indeed like the video, and let's get straight into it. So this is an interesting contest. In my opinion, a very surprising fight to be made. I mean, two fighters who, you wouldn't exactly say are on that of a collision course, but I suppose maybe, the matchup makes a bit of sense, and, we'll touch more upon, of course, the whole main event fight and everything like that in just a moment, but I just wanted to touch upon a few, little fights, a few names, notable names, which are on the undercard, and so, Tapia, he returns. He was, looking good ahead of his last fight, and he didn't look that bad, but he was on the Zoo undercard versus, I believe it was Mertazali, if not then it was Fundora, and he got a draw. It was not a bad contest. It was a contest in which, it was always going to be entertaining, and you kind of expect that with Tapia. He's always got a very aggressive type style in which he's going to be willingly taking quite a lot of damage, but also, if he does land with his combinations that he's going to be often throwing, he's probably going to have success, but he's just going to stand in range and just throw. And, he met an opponent who was doing the same thing. Obviously, like I say, he's not trying to kind of avenge this draw at all. He's just kind of maybe brushing it aside, going back to what he knew, maybe trying to rebuild, maybe even trying to try something out a bit different stylistic wise for this contest. But he's back in Australia fighting, and it's on again another good undercard, and it was just a name in which perhaps maybe has gone under the radar a bit. I feel like if he'd have won his last fight, then perhaps he could have been put into that bit higher of a world level, and I thought he actually would have, but he of course didn't. It was a probably deserved draw if the more you look at it, but yeah, it was still a interesting contest, and maybe we could see it again. Possibly, we'll see. Maybe if he fights this fight and does well in this fight, it might just kind of jump over and skip over the opponent for a possible rematch. Zarafa, again, another notable name which is on this undercard. Zarafa has fought around at world level on multiple occasions. Most recently being against Arislandi Lara. He kind of showcased that Lara is still able to fight at a world class level, and kind of exposed Zarafa. Zarafa got beaten up and he inevitably got stopped, and Arislandi Lara looked very good, but there's no discredit to that. I mean, Arislandi Lara just beat Danny Garcia, and he again was on the older side himself, but that's still not a bad contest to win. And so, now he is coming in off a win versus Brown, and that's not a bad win. Again, he's somebody in Brown who has fought at a high level as well. He's just kind of always floated around. It's similarly kind of the case where he's been around for ages in the kind of fringe world level scene, Zarafa all world level scene in Zarafa, especially in Australia as well. And it seems like, whenever he takes a big loss, he goes back to Australia, has a couple more fights, and then comes back again. And so, again, it probably will be the same case. If he's able to win here, then he'll probably just return back to a maybe not world title fight, but maybe a high level world matchup, and that's because the middleweight division, if he is sticking around in there, isn't really the best at the moment. It's quite a weak division. I mean, we've just recently seen the Starboy name, who is meant to be coming in and changing everything up and becoming this dominant champion in Hamza Shiraz, having a bit of a blip and arguably losing versus a Damis, and the hype around him was kind of showing up to an extent, and so like I say, Zarafa, perhaps if Adamis isn't taking the fight versus Shiraz, Zarafa, if he wins, could get a fight versus Shiraz himself, so that could be an interesting contest, and that would get him on probably a Riyadh season show. And Sandstrom as well. She's coming off the loss versus Lascura. She's had a couple contests since, and again, she's another fighter who's trying to rebuild herself back to that world title type level. And with these Australian cards, something that I'm really a fan of is the fact that even if you do take a loss at the world level, even if it isn't on one of their shows, they'll continuously have you on, let you rebuild back up, and even if you never kind of go back to the world level again, and you just continually want to fight at a, mediocre level, then you can, and they'll accept that, and then they'll just continually put you on matchups and cards, and so you know you got to kind of give them credit, and I like that. It means that they, I suppose, respect their fighters, and so yeah, there's nothing too bad about that. But yeah, that was just a few names that I wanted to touch upon in the undercard. We'll now jump back to the main event, and we'll start by touching upon Jarvis. Jarvis, I mean, he's just similarly to Thurman. I mean, both of these fighters have kind of disappeared to an extent and then kind of come back. I mean, with Jarvis, it's a bit different because he took the loss versus Paro and he got, stopped badly a first round knockout where Paro coming into that fight wasn't the power puncher. He was somebody who had to be wary of Jarvis's power. And then obviously to have this big, statement making first round knockout defeat, Jarvis has had to go away, see if he really wants to actually get involved in the sport again, seeing if his chin can actually test it. And he's come back, and he's come back 10 times bigger, 10 times stronger. The way you kind of look at him now, he's first of all done a bulk incredibly. I mean, the way that he's built himself up is just very impressive, and not many humans in general can naturally do that well. And so, first of all, I'd like to hope it's natural, but yeah, there's not too many fighters that can do that and do it as well as what he's seemingly been able to do. But you, like I say, you look at him and you just go, how did he make super lightweight, let alone bantamweight, in which he started his career in and was first fighting for titles in? That's insane to me how he was able to do that, because now, he fought at middleweight in his last fight, and now he's, dropped back down a little bit to super welterweight, but still, you know, I can imagine it being difficult for him to make super welterweight at the moment, let alone for him to make bantamweight or super lightweight again or anything like that. So he's definitely come back, and he has come back probably with a different mentality, and he knows that he's never going to be able to get another matchup with a Liam Paro unless Paro comes up. But yeah, it's just crazy to me to see the kind of transformation in which he's had, in which a lot of fighters can't do. I mean, Thurman has been away for a while. He's come back, and you still kind of have a similar type of style, Thurman, and he still looks similar, and he's still able to compete around the same kind of weight classes. But with Jarvis, yeah, it was just a complete change in general, and I suppose that's one way of coming back after a defeat, and it shows that he was very, much committed to being able to, improve himself before he wanted to step back in the ring, which I do respect a lot. And obviously, with this fight versus Thurman, Thurman is somebody who is a great fighter and has been at a world level, has had some huge fights. I mean, Pacquiao being one of them, what a legendary name to be in the ring with, where he really tested Pacquiao and made it a very close fight. And so the fact that Jarvis is fighting Thurman, like I say, first of all, like I've touched upon, is a very strange matchup to see. I mean, it's definitely a step down for Thurman, and I just don't really know why he's wanting to take this fight. I mean, Thurman hasn't fought since 2022, which is, yes, a long time, but I just don't understand what they kind of want for him to come and be in the, like, suggested away corner, going to somebody else's home country, and then fighting an up and comer. I just don't know why it appeals to him. I thought he would probably, either want like a legendary type matchup who's in like a name similarly to himself, who's achieved already so much in the sport, or if he'd want somebody who can get him closer to a world title. Because I don't feel like a win versus Jarvis. I feel like if Jarvis beat Thurman, then it's a very big win and can push him right close to a world title shot. If Thurman beats Jarvis, then I don't feel like it does the same thing. I feel like Thurman doesn't, if he beats Jarvis, I just don't think that's that big of a name to have in his record, because then everybody would just say, oh, Jarvis was this, Jarvis hasn't been tested the same way. Whenever he did get tested, he got knocked out in the first round. And so it's just a strange one, and it's a risky one for Thurman. And I suppose that's just maybe his mentality, where Thurman's at, as to, he's just kind of willing to take whatever and do whatever to get interesting fights to an extent, but when you say interesting fights, the only reason why you could say that this fight is interesting is because Thurman is hyping it up. Thurman is very good at selling fights. That is kind of what he's known for. He can be quite funny in his uh, build-ups and everything like that, and he's definitely been known to, rile some fighters up and just, yeah, be an interesting name to have around the boxing scene. And so, any fight that he's going to be in, he's going to get the kind of more interesting vocal side out of their opponent. And Jarvis has tried to be vocal, tried to kind of hit back at Thurman. I don't necessarily think it's all worked that well, and I think it's kind of exposed that Jarvis himself isn't the best talkers, but he's definitely still not the worst in the sport. There's definitely a lot worse. But maybe that's why Thurman in the past has had more opportunities because of the way that he's going to build up fights and the way that he's going to be able to hype fights, even if the opponent really isn't able to do that. Quite often you see that in boxing. Thurman's a very, very talented fighter, but like I say, still you do kind of see that in boxing, and nonetheless, it's really kind of exciting and hyping up the Australian crowd, I feel like. And like I say, I feel like Jarvis, he has the potential to be a star in Australia, but he just really hasn't kind of built himself the right way and hasn't been vocal enough and everything like that, and it's kind of maybe limited him in that aspect. But when you kind of look and just an interesting little debate that I was kind of thinking of, Australian fans, boxing fans, arguably could be better than UK boxing fans. I don't think they're as loud. I don't think they're gonna get behind maybe their own quite as much from their kind of hometown, but they will definitely get behind their fighters, and they will always come in numbers. And you watch any highlights, any fights from any Australian fighters, they're gonna get views, and they're gonna get arguably better views than that of quite often big like UK boxing events. And it's just a surprising thing. I feel like nobody's ever really touched upon how good the Australian fan base is, because they will come in numbers and they will support their fighters, like I say, in numbers. And it's just, yeah, an interesting thing. And during a time in which Oceania boxing in general, perhaps maybe isn't doing the best. I mean, at one point, just kind of last year, the year before, it was doing amazing. I mean, we had, you know, Jarvis, Paro, Optaya, Zoo, just some amazing fighters. Zarafa still fighting at a very high level, some amazing fighters. But now we've had, Zarafa lose, we've had Zoo lose, we've had Paro lose now. You know, it's not always the best to see, and it is going to affect him. Obviously, Optaya, he's flying at the moment, and he's really carrying Oceania boxing as a whole. Jarvis again, he lost as well. When you look at Zoo, it's going to take a lot for him to rebuild. He got lost badly in that last fight versus Murtazaliev. Paro can rebuild and come back, because I don't feel like he got beaten up too badly versus Hitchens, but it still was quite a rough performance. And so, saying how good the women's side of things is going for Oceania type boxing, I feel like the men's side is needing of, like I say, a star, somebody to come through and somebody to be able to really create a name for themselves. And possibly Jarvis, like I say, if he beats Thurman, then he definitely catapults himself into that to high world level, and you know maybe he can get himself in there. But like I say, I feel like a lot of people are really writing off Jarvis for this fight and believing that it's bad matchmaking, because Thurman has fought at such a high level, and the fact he did look really good against Barrios, who of course went on to now become WBC world champion. And the fact that Thurman just 3 years ago, yes, Barrios was coming off that defeat versus Gervonta Davis, but Thurman was still able to really have a lot of success versus him, and then resulting in that Barrios to then go on to have so much success. That win is definitely aged well for Thurman, and so like I say, people are definitely believing that it's bad matchmaking. If Thurman can go and beat Jarvis again and get back to a world title level, then Thurman is really just arguably defying the odds to an extent, but still showcasing how unique of a talent he really is. And I'll now kind of give just a little base overview of the fight and touch upon just the kind of general things in which I've kind of half talked about already. Jarvis is 22-1 with 20 KOs, and Thurman is 30-1 with 22 KOs. This fight is a 10-round fight in the super welterweight division. Jarvis's last fight was a win via TKO in round 4 versus Rodriguez, and Thurman's last fight was a win via unanimous decision versus Barrios. Thurman is 36 and Jarvis is 27. This is in Jarvis's home country of Australia. Like I said, they both got the singular defeat on the record. Not at the same kind of level of opponents, but still, nonetheless, the Jarvis defeat did kind of age well in itself for Paro, because of course Paro became a world champion. But yeah, still, both got a singular defeat. 10-round contest, not a 12-round one, which is an interesting one for me. I feel like this definitely could have had some sort of title on the line. I mean, I've seen a lot less fights have titles on and stuff like that. But nonetheless, it's a 10-round fight, and maybe it's because of Thurman's age. Maybe he's because he's not fought in 3 years, maybe he doesn't want to jump straight back into a 12-rounder. Maybe Jarvis was the best option in that aspect. Maybe that's why he picked Jarvis as an opponent. But Jarvis last performance TKO round 4, he was made to look good. He looked good. He looked impressive, and he looked like coming off a year out himself. He looked good and looked like he could fight well. Got a good stoppage, but Rodriguez looked very poor. Jarvis was made to look good because of how poor Rodriguez was realistically, and you see that so many times with genuine type opponents coming in against fighters who are clearly levels above them, and Jarvis did showcase that, which is, I suppose, of course, what you want. And again, like I say, Thurman's last performance, great performance against Barrios, but that's being 3 years ago, and like I say, now Thurman's coming in another 3 years older, still 36, which isn't incredibly old for a world title kind of level contender, but still, on the older side of things, 9 years senior to that of Jarvis. And yeah, we'll touch upon each fighter individually as a fighter now. So Jarvis as a fighter, he's strong. That's obvious. I feel like coming up in size, he's only just gotten stronger, and he was already strong at the lower weight divisions. He plants his feet. Arguably, he's quite flat-footed, but he's always going to be planting his feet and twisting into his shots very well. I saw a clip of Thurman kind of trying to replicate Jarvis's style, where he kind of planted his feet and just started going to the body, going up to the head with hooks, and he pretty much got it down to a T. To be completely honest, that is for the most part what he's going to be doing for a lot of it, and he does have success doing that. And Thurman even kind of acknowledged what he was doing there is good, but will he be able to kind of pin down Thurman and be able to get him in that position to be able to unload them big shots? He throws all his shots to hurt you. He's always going to be throwing just kind of purely power shots, not mixing up the power. He throws all over. He doubles up his shots very well. He continuously walks you down. He fights well in close. I feel like he's letting his hands go more in fights. I think in the past he could have been a bit hesitant and a bit reluctant and not be able to follow up the shots the same way, especially going in against movers. But I feel like he is becoming more confident in just letting his hands go in that last performance. Maybe again it was just because of the level of opponent, but he was still letting his hands go more and having more success. He's quite a physical fighter. I feel like he can also deal well with kind of being in a dogfight, being in a physical contest, and that's of course what you want to see from the strong fighter, somebody who can deal with being the strong fighter and utilize that as a good attribute. And he's a fast starter as well, and maybe if he can maintain a high pace, then he can catch Thurman out, who does slow down a little bit at this point. And again, like I say, 3 years on from when his last fight was, he could slow down even more. Negatives about Jarvis: his defensive movement is very poor. He can definitely be too tense at times, and that can kind of result in when he steps in, he can kind of lunge in, or at the same time kind of square up. I feel like he definitely is looking tense, and that kind of affects his balance at the same time as well. If he's coming in, squaring up, being very tense and tight, it just can ultimately, like I say, just result in going straight into a big shot like he did this versus Paro, and just the balance will go straight away, and he can just get knocked down relatively easily if you time it right. And I feel like Thurman definitely could time it right. His head's on the line a lot of the time. Jarvis, he can be quite one-dimensional in his approach and his game plan as a whole. He can be caught coming in. Like I say, he's walking you down with minimal head movement. He can definitely be caught coming in quite often. He doesn't always fight behind the jab. I feel like his jab can be very good. His last performance, he did fight using the jab, but he was just kind of more so flinging it out than kind of keeping his guard behind the jab, if that makes sense. He doesn't fight on the back foot that well. I feel like he can be hesitant, like I've touched upon. He tries to, when he does try to slip shots, it's not good. It's not. He just looks unnatural when he's trying to do it. I feel like definitely does struggle against southpaws. Thurman is typically an orthodox fighter, but his footwork can be quite tricky, and sometimes he can position himself in more southpaw type positions. And Paro was definitely pinning down Jarvis's foot by continuously standing on it in that contest. Maybe that was frustrating him a little bit. Paro perhaps was fighting a little bit dirty in the one round that we saw versus Jarvis. He, of course, has been hurt, that's been shown. Thurman's been dropped once versus Pacquiao, but was still able to get up and carry on fighting. And that was, late in the fight. Jarvis has been hurt early, and he doesn't, necessarily make gaps, create gaps, set traps much at all. Jarvis. Thurman, as a fighter, he's got very fast hands and he can use that very well. Like I say, the speed might be slowing down a little bit, but in the early rounds, he definitely does have the fast hands, the explosive style. He definitely does spring in and out. It's definitely a young person's type of style, and like I've kind of touched upon, if he's able to do that kind of style at 36 years of age with 3 years out, then he is really defying the odds of, what a person's really kind of meant to do, and it'd be very, very impressive. He circles well defensively, can fight on the front foot or the back foot, much more kind of well-rounded in that aspect than that of Jarvis. He's hard to time, he changes levels well, he's much looser in his movement, which definitely does help him. Like I say, kind of fighting on the back foot means that he's not quite such a easy target to hit, and he is definitely difficult to pin down. He damages you easily, even if the shots don't look particularly powerful and they are just singular shots. They seem to have a lot of success and do seem to also be able to, like I say, damage, hurt opponents. He's accurate in his work. He's often able to find his range very well, and yes, a lot of times it is singular shots that he's throwing, but if he's having so much success damaging you, then he doesn't need to throw crazy amounts of combinations. And if it's a lot more accurate than maybe somebody else throwing combinations, then again, like I say, why do you need to throw so many shots? He works all angles well. He's kind of always going. For the most part, he is always able to keep quite a high pace. Even when he gets tired, he is still able to carry on. Like I've touched upon, it might be different with the age coming, but we'll have to wait and see. Negatives about him, he, like I say, does throw singular shots. It means that when he does throw combinations, I feel like it is a bit less controlled. It's definitely wide in his shot, so he could get caught with a big shot from Jarvis when he's throwing quite widely. He can be kept at a jab. If you have a jab and move type style, I feel like Barrios was having a bit of success with that, and I feel like Pacquiao can and did have success with that. And so yeah, like I say, if Jarvis gets behind his jab well, then maybe he can have a bit more success. He can be frustrated, Thurman. He can, like I say, throw wide. He can come in quite recklessly himself and, spring in a bit, like I say, quite recklessly. And if he does get caught, he has his chin in the air, an open guard. It means it can, catch him off guard, can disrupt his balance, could easily drop him when he's just springing in if the timing is right. He's not that physical, so I feel like Jarvis could potentially expose that and make it difficult for him physically. And in general, I don't think he fights in close quite as well as that of possibly Jarvis at times. Thurman is the favourite for this fight, and I think that Thurman will win via TKO in round 5. I don't think Jarvis has got good enough timing to be able to have success against Thurman. I feel like Thurman can continuously spring in and out. Jarvis will probably give a lot of respect to Thurman and maybe even accept the back foot. if he doesn't and he comes forwards, I feel like Thurman can fight on the back foot very well, and he can be difficult to be hit. This is the Thurman that we're used to seeing, by the way. Like I say, we could end up seeing a completely different version when it comes to fight night, but hopefully this is the version that we will see. And like I say, if he comes in with a singular shots continually, I feel like he can always have success and always be able to land on that big target of Jarvis. And I do think this is quite a big mismatch in opponents, and I don't necessarily know if I were too bothered about seeing this fight, and I don't believe Jarvis is quite good enough to be able to get to a world kind of level. But Thurman, I think, is going to expose this again. Also, having the experience so much superior to that of Jarvis again is another reason why I think he's going to be able to have so much more success and, like I say, stop him in round 5, which would be an excellent victory for Thurman. Now, will he want to carry on fighting? You'd think yes, if he's coming in off a big knockout victory, but at the same time, he beat Barrios convincingly, and again, like I say, that's aged so well, but he just never really seemed eager to get back in the ring again. So I don't really know what to expect from Thurman. I feel like at the moment there's so many excellent options, but if he has another 3 years out, would he, would these options still be available first of all? Would he be coming back in this weight division? Is he more comfortable in the welterweight division? Will he move up to the middleweight division? I'm not really sure. Matchups I'd love to see him in. I felt like Lubin could be a very good fight. I mean, Lubin's been floating around looking for a kind of big name opponent. That could be an excellent fight. Spence Jr. could be a huge fight. I feel like Spence Jr. is another guy who's waiting around for a big opponent and maybe didn't give Fundora enough credit as being a big opponent, and that's why that fight kind of never actually came to anything. Maybe it will happen if Fundora beats Booker, but I'm not entirely sure. And so that could be an excellent fight to happen. Two former world champions who have been around kind of at the same time, and so that definitely could be a matchup that could make sense. Bahachuk, that would be an excellent fight to be made. Bahachuk is just this pure excellent fighter coming through who is always going to put on an entertaining performance, and he's going to come with such heart and will. And it's just a fighter like that who I don't necessarily know how long he might be around as a name, because he's definitely always going to get really, really tough matchups, and he probably will be in the away corner quite a lot. And I just feel like if Bahachuk loses one more fight, then he's going to go right back down the rankings again, which will be sad. But we'll have to wait and see. Or as a kind of welterweight type matchup, of course, Ennis is fighting Stanionis. The winner of that, Ennis has always been wanting these big fights, these big matchups, and he's been rumoured about fighting everybody under the sun, to be completely honest. But maybe a Keith Thurman fight could be one that could actually happen. Somebody who doesn't has shown with this Jarvis fight that he's willing to risk it all. And so, Ennis, that could be an excellent fight. And even if Thurman was to lose that fight, then he could just blame it on his age, and that could be a passing of the torch type moment. Or Stanionis, that would be an excellent fight as well. We're not writing off Stanionis from the possibility of beating Ennis. But yeah, that is it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like the video if you did need, like the video, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.